Hello, and welcome to Broads and Books. I'm Amy.
And I'm Erin, and this is episode number 88, White Rabbit.
White Rabbit, as in the song from Jefferson Airplane. I want you to picture something, Erin.
Okay, I am.
It's 1990. Mm-hmm. I'm a 13-year-old. Mm-hmm. I got gangly limbs. Mm-hmm. I am 5'8", my current height. I don't know what to do with that height. I don't know how to move my body, really.
Okay.
I'm also a nerd. I'm a real hardcore nerd.
Okay.
And I'm such a nerd that I start going to a separate school for half the day. This is in 8th grade. And I go through, high school.
Like a smarty pants school.
A smarty pants school,
okay.
for sure. Mm-hmm. And at that smarty pants school, because we're all nerds, we're socially awkward, our way of communicating is handing around mixtapes of 60s and 70s music. Mm-hmm. And that is where I discovered the Jefferson Airplane. What I liked about it and why I chose it for this. Okay, you want to stop?
Yeah, I want to stop you there. All right. Because you painted an image and then you didn't finish it. I want to know where you were. Did you pop that into your boombox in your room? What were the feelings? Take me there.
That's great.
You got me halfway there, and then you just stopped.
Well, there was a bus trip somewhere. I don't remember where. And one of the Smarty Pants boys was talking about this, and I think I got a copy of the mixtape or something. Yep, slid it into my boombox when I got home.
Boombox.
Yes. And it's very sort of otherworldly. There's an Alice in Wonderland sort of theme, but it's real dark and mysterious. And I was like, this is it. I like this. It's dark. It's scary. There's maybe a conspiracy kind of thing, which led me to this.
Okay.
So I chose it for this theme because we're talking about conspiracy. We're talking about following the rabbit down the rabbit hole.
Down the hole.
All the way down the hole.
All the way down.
To find the nefarious things that are in that hole.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Did that picture get painted enough for you?
It did. Now I feel like it was complete.
Okay.
I got there and then I was like, I want the rest of the image of you actually hearing the song at first.
I forgot to say, this is still when I have that terrible perm.
Oh.
Yeah, so we got real curly hair.
Oh.
Curlier than my actual natural curl, by the way. Because at some point I decided my hair isn't curly, so I'm gonna
make it curly.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
You know what? We do some things to ourselves that we just shouldn't.
Yeah.
We should know better.
I will never forget the smell of a perm.
It's something, isn't it?
It is something.
It is
something. And it brings you back to that awkward smell of adolescence.
I'm sure that you haven't yet watched the SNL from last night.
No, I haven't.
But I will just use this phrase and you can see it.
Okay.
There is mention of perm cancer.
There has to be lots of cancer from that perm.
I know.
All those chemicals.
That has chemicals. I feel bad for the people that work there.
Oh, God.
How do you do that?
Does your skin just fall off after a while? Like,
you're just a musculoskeletal system walking around?
Yeah, just skinless, just walking around.
That's terrifying.
That really is terrifying.
That's terrifying.
You know what isn't terrifying, Erin?
What?
Big acai. Oh, we had that again today.
We did. It's back!
So we're high on a couple things, I think. We're high on big acai.
Yep.
And we're high off of doing a live session yesterday.
Whew.
Man, oh man.
That is coursing through my veins.
How many times do you think we've said to each other that we're bright, shining stars?
732. I counted. No. I went as far as to watch Bohemian Rhapsody Friday night and act like I was somehow related to Freddie Mercury. Like I was just channeling him in that farm-aid live performance. And that's the level that my ego's gotten to.
And I think
Freddie
that's a
Mercury
natural level. You
Okay,
know, it's
good.
Des Moines Book Fest and then it's Live Aid Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
On the same page.
Million people.
Yeah.
Maybe 25. No, I'm just kidding. There's some steps, and I like to skip steps.
I do too.
I'll go from A to Z. I don't care.
Listen, we'll put the work in, but we're going to jump those steps.
Yeah. But our work is really the work of like 10 people, so we get to skip some steps.
Exactly.
When you're this
we're
good,
awesome.
you get to skip steps.
When we're smarty pantses that have grown to adults and channeled our love of reading into a podcast, this is what happens.
So bringing together the love of us and conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there was going to be a conspiracy theory or rabbit hole about us, what do you think it would be?
I think it would be that we are actually the Podcats pretending to be Erin and Amy.
Oh.
Right?
That's good.
Yeah. I'm envisioning Thelma and Louise, like, pretending to be human, and Ziggy sort of like being their manager on the side,
my
telling them,
Catager. You Catager, you, Ziggy.
So, I mean, I don't know if that conspiracy theory exists, but I want it to, and I want people to run with it.
Yeah, I say
because
start it.
Who knows? Are we really Amy and Aaron, or are we the Podcats?
Well, we might have missed an opportunity to create it yesterday with our live performance. We could have filtered in cat heads like that lawyer. And then said, I'm not a cat. Or am I?
Or am I? Yeah.
No, sir, I'm not a cat. That's a good one.
Yeah. Woo. I mean, we're going to, get this out into the world. So, Aaron, a couple weeks ago, we talked about obsession. And this was kind of similar in that, we talked a little bit about rabbit holes. This time, we're going full on into rabbit holes. Have you ever been so far down a rabbit hole that you realized, oh, shit, I need to stop and get myself out? What happened?
I sure have. Okay. Well, for some reason, it relates to true crime for me.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. For some reason, I got obsessed with the Martha Moxley murder. It's the Greenwich, Connecticut murder, and there was some Kennedys implicated in it. Yeah. I don't know why. I think it was because I randomly got a book about it from the library. Like, it was older high school years. I think I saw it and I thought, oh, that looks good. And I read it and I just got enthralled because for some reason, in my mind, it didn't make sense that there were all these wealthy families and it still wasn't solved. Like, it just seemed like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
And I think it was maybe not the first time that I confronted class, but it was one of those times where you really saw like, oh, your name can really get you out of anything. Like, there's some serious
lesson.
pull.
Yeah.
And so then I remember that then I saw that who afterwards I realized not a great source, but Mark Furman wrote a book about it because he was one of the investigating people on it, right?
Oh boy.
So then when I read that and then I kind of backtracked and realized who he was, then I did some more reading about him, and then that led down a different conspiracy about his involvement in the LAPD and a lot of that stuff, okay? So then that was a whole different rabbit hole I went down for a while. Then I came back to the Martha Moxley thing, and there's some other books. There's been a lot of fictional accounts. There was one written by Dominic Dunn, and then I want to say he did a nonfiction account as well, but I'm not sure about that, but okay. I think so.
Yeah.
I read like 5 or 6 books about it, and then I was like, okay, I can't, because this is kind of pre-internet where you could really go, but I was just getting as much information as I could, and I realized after like a year, like, okay, you're not like,
you dedicated a year to this though.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I because I just kept finding books about it, and then I'd be like, oh, it's at the library, I'll go get it and I'll read it, and after a certain point, you're like, okay, I think I really know this case inside and out.
Oh my goodness.
I need to move on. Like, this isn't going anywhere. But it was sort of what sparked my love of true crime, because prior to that, when I was younger, middle school, I loved Mary Higgins Clark. And then I moved on to other kind of psychological thriller, the crime novel, mystery novel type genre. And then it broke into this true crime. And this is, I mean, we had Dateline when we were younger, but we didn't have Oxygen and ID and the way to like.
It wasn't to this level at all.
And we didn't have access to documentaries like this. And it just wasn't a thing. I mean, being a true crime buff wasn't a thing. That just made you a weirdo. Like, you're just obsessed with murder.
Yeah.
So once I found that, and I found that there were books written about real crimes, it was like, that was a rabbit hole. And then it sort of expanded from there. Like, I never fully got out. I just dug tunnels to other places so that I didn't have to stay.
So you have a network of rabbit holes.
Yes. Yeah. But it all started with Martha Moxley.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I remember that I found out like that there was tons of, investigative stories about it later on in my adult life. And I watched all those, and because I was obsessed with it. Wow. It's just one of those cases where it feels so cut and dry.
Yeah.
And there's just only a handful of people it could be, but yet there's enough evidence to sort of exonerate all of those same people. It's just such a very strange story. And
it's a good point. I think some of the most interesting true crime to me is when you like, and maybe just because you're an outsider and you're looking at this and you're like, this looks pretty cut. This looks clear. But you're recognizing all the different forces that might be at play. Yeah.
That's when Mike and I always get excited when a Dateline's 2 hours and you think in the first 10 minutes, you're like, okay, this is obviously what's going on. Then you're like, wait, This is a
2 hours
2-hour
left.
episode.
Oh.
Things are gonna get twisty. Keith Morrison has some surprises in store.
Do you think that maybe, like, as humans, we're just sort of naturally drawn? I mean, just thinking about all the legal shows that we have, even in the 50s and 60s, and the legal shows, the cop shows, all of it, we're somehow fascinated by this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's twofold. I think it's the one, you think it could never happen to you. So there's a voyeuristic element of you like watching it with someone else, but it doesn't necessarily hit that same spot that you think, oh gosh, this could be me. I mean, how many times do you see that in interviews? Like, I never thought it would happen in my town. I never thought it would be my family. Because it seems like this faraway thing that feels safe to be from a safe distance and watch it. But I also think that as society, we're very obsessed with the idea of good and bad. Like, we're not great at wanting to put someone in one of those categories. They're either all good or they're all bad. And true crime is really the intersection of that. Like, there's good people that make bad choices, and there's bad people that have good attributes or do good things. And so that's really where those two things intersect, right? Like, oh, that person had the, ability to do that, or that's who it was. It kind of fulfills that need to know that there's gray area.
Yeah. And that discomfort with the gray area too.
And that, there's, I suppose, an element in all of us that we know that there's dark, that there are things that you hold very dear that if they were threatened, you could imagine getting to a place that isn't good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm glad, I was going to say I'm glad you're out of the rabbit hole, but you're not. Like you said, you're in a warren. Is that what rabbits have? That it's like a little, set of tunnels?
Sure,
like,
yeah.
I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
All I did was just find someone who agreed to do a podcast with me so I could talk about my rabbit holes.
Yep.
And make other people listen to them. Well, speaking of animals.
Yeah.
You talked about what would be a theory about us. What kind of rabbit holes do you think the Podcats would be interested in if they had access to the internet?
I can just picture them with their little claws, like
using their little
using the digits
Yep.
to surf the webs.
Surf the interwebs.
I'm seeing a couple things.
Okay.
I'm seeing that they're going to go hard for live cams where there's animals to murder.
Oh.
Ziggy, I've shown Ziggy live cams of aquariums, of birds, even of big cats. And yeah, he gets into it. And I think all of them, Thelma and Louise, just haven't really been exposed to it. I think they would like the opportunity of like, oh, I could murder that. So there's that.
Okay.
I also think
kind of their version of reality TV.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
I also think they would be enthralled by social media because two reasons. One, they're narcissists. I mean, that's what cats are.
Yeah.
They're going to be real excited about it. But also, I think there's the factor of like, it reinforces how stupid humans are. And they like that. I mean, they like to judge humans. So they're going to be able to see that and be like, this just proves how dumb they are and how bad they're made.
Not to go down a rabbit hole, but Twitter might have been invented by a cat for that reason.
Right. To show.
They just keep falling for it. They just keep falling for it. They hit tweet before they think about it.
Maybe cats are behind all conspiracy theories because they're like, let's see what the humans do. I think they also like to marvel at how badly we're made. Because that's fair. They're like, they don't even have fur. They have skin that breaks all the time. Like, they're dumb.
They are dumb.
So yeah, I think they're going to go hard for live cams and social media.
Okay.
And we're never going to see them again.
I think that's valid. I think all of that is valid. Wow. You kind of just blew my mind.
I mean, now I'm just imagining them.
I'm just imagining them in like these high offices in like towers. Really
with
fancy.
Little suits, little bow ties.
Yeah, little bow ties. And they're like, how did it go today? Very well.
What stupidity did the humans fall for today?
Well, I'll just tell you that R.I.P. Chris Pratt is trending. And many of them thought he actually died.
And then all the nefarious stuff, like maybe they're behind, some of the crazy cult beliefs, like the Scientology stuff,
Yes.
Maybe they're like, let's see if humans believe this.
Yeah,
if they'll pay a lot of money, if they'll pay all their life savings.
Yeah. Yes. Well, who should we have be the face of Scientology? How about that guy? The yellow teeth and the weird laser shoot. If they believe him, they'll believe anything.
I mean, it explains a lot.
And here we are.
Yeah. So maybe it hasn't all been Thelma and Louise and Ziggy, but it's been their brethren.
Oh, I think they're involved.
Yeah.
I think they're involved. Yeah.
I think Fiona was involved when, she was alive.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Erin, thinking about conspiracy theories,
Yeah.
what do you think differentiates a conspiracy theory versus like a fact-based theory? Or a fact-based story, excuse me.
Yeah. I think that the difference is coincidences, because I think that you can take a coincidence and you can make it mean anything. Like there's people that I don't believe in coincidences. Everything happened, for a reason. But in a factual story, now, as of late, this has become more difficult, but a factual story is fact. Like no matter how you're looking at it, it's just a fact. Like Iowa is a state. That's a fact.
It is.
It's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's a fact. But there's a lot of things in conspiracy theories that happen to be coincidental. Like, on the same day this person died, this person happened to be missing from work. And that means this, when in reality, it could just be, the time clock didn't work that day, or they were sick, or whatever. But to me, it all comes down to coincidence, because that's how conspiracy theories are born.
Yep.
Someone twists it to mean something else. That's what a conspiracy theory is. It's just somebody's idea that they see something different than everyone else.
Yeah.
It's kind of like those magic eye pictures.
Oh, yes.
But there's actually no picture there. So everybody's just saying, well, I see a boat. Somebody else is like, that's obviously a cat.
I would get so frustrated because I would never admit to seeing anything because I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
I was like, why am I lying about this stupid thing? There's nothing there.
No, I can't see anything.
Yeah.
And then other people are like, oh, it's a fantastic castle with a tiny mouse at the top. And you're like, okay. Okay. First of all, that's not even close to what a magic eye picture is. Too much detail.
Why is the mouse so tiny?
Yeah. Ruined it.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
I think that's a good point. I think people they're looking for things to believe. And when the coincidences point them that way, that makes a lot of sense. As you were talking, I was remembering when I was younger, I was fascinated by this idea that Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy were somehow tied because they were both elected, 1860, 1960.
Yeah.
They had like the same number of letters in their name, and they had the same vice president's last name after them, and they were both killed in office, and like all these little things, purely just coincidences.
Right.
But as a young kid, I was like, oh my God, this is a sign of something. I don't know what it was a sign of, but something.
Well, I also think that we've sort of trained ourselves to think that, because there have been things that are shocking, that are technically a conspiracy theory that we find out are fact or are true. Like there was this person pulling these strings, or this whole thing was a scam, or this was fake, or whatever. And every time something like that happens, we're all left going, okay, so if that's possible, then
anything is possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good point. And maybe since in the 70s when Watergate happened and it showed that our leaders are extremely fallible and constantly lying to us, maybe then we've realized anything could be true.
Yeah.
So might as well just believe this.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%.
That's sobering.
Yeah.
But also fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Just like a good conspiracy theory.
It should be, yes.
So my fiction pick is called Annihilation.
Ooh.
By Jeff Vandermeer.
Ooh.
This is part of a trilogy, and this first book came out in 2014. It also was a movie, so if you recognize a movie name, it's based on this.
Okay.
When we start the book, we are with a group of women, an anthropologist, a surveyor, a psychologist, and a biologist, and the biologist is our narrator. We never learn their names. They make up a 12th expedition. And if that sounds ominous, it should, because there have been 11 previous teams of people who have ventured into a place in the southern U.S. called Area X. This area, it's been cut off from the rest of the world for years, and we think it's a place where nature is just sort of taken over. But we're not really sure, because one expedition, the very first one, came back and reported, yes, it's beautiful, nature, whatever. But then another expedition all committed mass suicide. And then one of them all killed each other. And the last expedition disappeared, but then all returned to the regular world as some weird, almost zombie type ghost thing that then died a few months later of cancer altogether. Our narrator's husband was part of that last expedition.
Oh boy.
So now this team, this 12th team, is going in again, and their plan is to map the area, to observe, and to hope for a better outcome. As you might expect from that setup, we get some spooky, weird, unexplainable shit. There's the matter of getting in. they cross over this sort of shimmery border, and then they're ending up somewhere, and time has passed, and they don't know how they ended up here.
Right.
There's wild animals in this area that have an odd, almost human look. There's a tower that instead of going up, it goes down, and there's words on the walls as it's going down that's made of something alive, like a moss type thing. There's hypnosis going on, and members of the team start acting real sketchy. So all of that, fantastic premise for a story. It's super gripping. You have no idea where it's going.
Right.
But I chose it for this theme because there's more involved. This is a trilogy, like I mentioned, and it's the Southern Reach Trilogy. And the Southern Reach is the government organization that keeps sending in these expeditions.
Oh, okay.
And first you're thinking like, what the hell are you doing? You would think maybe after the mass suicide, that's a no.
Yeah.
Maybe after killing each other, that's another no.
Yeah.
Nope, they keep on doing it. And there's reasons. And in this book, you start to see that. But in the second book, named Authority, you see this agency and you start seeing like what's behind that government agency. And in the third, called Acceptance, you dig into really what's behind all this Area X stuff. To me, I think a lot of conspiracy is often around government and what's really going on behind the scenes. Like, what are their leaders really up to? And organizations that use people as playthings for some, bigger, often nefarious purpose, right? And I think this completely fits the bill, plus includes this sort of strange supernatural element that makes you just never sure where you're going. And it makes you never sure what's going to happen, which makes for wonderful reading.
Sounds amazing.
Annihilation. First off, I think I didn't know anything really about the book, about Jeff Vandermeer, but I saw that title and was like, that's got to be a good book.
Yeah.
And I picked it up.
So true.
Yeah.
You don't want to admit this sometimes, but a title or the way a cover looks.
Oh my God. And the cover's beautiful. And that was another thing. It looked sort of creepy. And the title was like, yes, this is going to.
It really makes a difference.
It really does.
You don't want to judge a book by its cover, but
sometimes you do.
Sometimes you do.
Yeah.
Sometimes that gets it in your hot little hands.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised to hear it's a movie. That sounds exactly like a movie.
Interesting thing, if you happen to watch the movie, or if you have watched the movie, it's a bit different from the book.
Oh, okay.
But in a really interesting way. Like the guy that did it, the director, the name escapes me right now, had a sort of different take on it, which is really interesting in and of its own right. And some tremendous people, Natalie Portman, Tessa Thompson, Gina Rodriguez, Jennifer Jason Leigh. Terrific cast. So I would recommend that as well.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds great. Well, my book this week for White Rabbit is called Necessary People by Anna Petoniak. This was published in May of 2019. And the story starts out with Violet and Stella, who are best friends after meeting at a college visit. So they just happen to talk to each other, and basically Violet decides to follow Stella to this college. Stella's beautiful, comes from a very wealthy and very prestigious family, and Violet's just basically trying to make something of herself despite her roots. She's very goal-oriented, very driven. She's got a plan. So Stella brings Violet into her world. She takes her on vacations, holidays with her family.
Oh, wow.
She just gets brought in. But this whole time you're getting this idea like Violet, they're friends, but Violet's also really studying this family, like learning all their mannerisms, figuring out how to be like them. She thinks this is going to be useful later in her life. Like, I need to know how to act like I'm wealthy.
Yeah.
So eventually, after they both graduate college, they decide to move to New York and share an apartment. And Stella's family is going to foot the bill because they're, uber wealthy. It's this great apartment, although Violet is going to pay some amount of rent. Now, Violet gets a job at a cable news network because that's her dream. She's going to work at a news, she was going to be a journalist. She starts out at this cable news network. Stella's like, I'm going to take a year off and travel. So she's not actually living at the apartment with Violet. And Violet is working like just day and night, lots of hours. She's not hearing from Stella. They're not really keeping their friendship up. Eventually, Stella comes back, but not before Violet starts to get weird vibes from her family. Like maybe Violet's staying a little too long. Like they think it's weird that she's staying in this apartment, even though she's paying rent because Stella's not there. It's for Stella. So there's kind of some weird like moments that Violet's uneasy. Stella comes back, and when she sees that really Violet's becoming successful. She's moving up the ranks at the cable news network fast. Like, she outdid all the interns. She puts in the hours. She's got a really good eye for it. She becomes really good friends with the main executive producer, and she's making a career. Like, they can see she's going to make a mark. And Stella immediately sort of becomes jealous of this. Like, oh, I haven't figured out what I want to do. So out of nowhere, Stella magically gets a job at the cable news network.
Oh, come on.
But she's not going to be a producer. She's going to be a star.
Oh, no.
She's going to be an anchor. So all of a sudden, they kind of find themselves on different teams, and all of this stuff that they thought didn't matter, like where they came from and who they were before, matters a lot.
For sure.
And connections all of a sudden matter a lot. And who Stella knows and who Violet knows matter a lot. And they're at this crossroads of fighting each other while still pretending to sort of be in a friendship. So it gets really intense from there. I won't spoil the rest of it for you, but it's really interesting. I picked it for this theme because, one, there's so much going on behind the scenes that Violet can't figure out because she's not connected. She doesn't have the information. So it feels like a conspiracy to her. Like, everybody's conspiring against her. She's not on the same team. She doesn't get access to the same things. People are doing each other favors just because they know each other. They're doing favors for Stella because they know who her dad is.
Yeah.
They know that he's wealthy. They know who her grandma is. These types of things are happening. I also think that a lot of their problem comes down to communication. Like, they just, for being friends, they're not very honest with each other.
Yeah.
And they kind of assume the worst in each other. So they end up creating rabbit holes about the other person. Like, oh, that happened, so clearly they're doing that. Or, they didn't show up here, which means X, Y, and Z. They're creating all these scenarios that aren't really true, but are helping cement this sort of fight between them. Plus, it has a cable news network. And kind of like the movie Bombshell,
we know there's some conspiracy stuff happening there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly. So
wow.
It's a really fast read. It's really interesting. It's different. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I like that element that you brought up, that almost class itself feels like a conspiracy sometimes, because there is these rules up here and these connections that if you're not part of it, you can't have access to.
Yes.
So it does feel like, what's behind all this?
Right. She feels like she almost has to just study how to be a person in this world. Otherwise, she's going to reveal that she doesn't have these things. And there's some weird, like, Stella's grandma was kind of the one with money, and then it's her son that married Stella's mom. So Stella's mom isn't considered as great as Stella's dad because he came into it with money. He has the big job. And so somehow, because she didn't have money coming in, she's like a step down from the rest of them. And there's all these factors,
these rules
that play
and
in.
Stuff.
She, Stella has a brother, and the way that he sees the world and interacts with the world is very much, you can't almost blame him. It's more like he's never been told no. Or he's used to being able to rely on connections to fix a problem. So that's what he thinks you do. It's interesting. There's so many layers in this story. Very nuanced, but super fun.
Well, I've got another doozy for you.
Woo!
Another other genre pick. And this is a graphic novel that comes from Carmen Maria Machado. It is illustrated. And by the way, we said ooh because we love her. She wrote In the Dream House. She wrote Her Body and Other Parties, which we recommended both of those. But those are, all prose. This is a graphic novel that is illustrated by Denis, and the book is called The Low, Low Woods. Have you read this?
No, it's been on my list
Has it?
forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is in 90s era. Okay. Elle and V are two best friends who live in a town in Pennsylvania called Shudder to Think.
That's
hyphenated. Like that's not a great name to start with. No. They are in a movie theater one day, and they both sort of wake up in a start, and they realize, like, wait, where are they? Where have they been? Like, time is lost, and it's very disconcerting. They have no answers But what's even scarier is that they're not the only ones this has happened to over time. A lot of the women in town have had this sort of situation where there's lost time, there's lost memories. Some have even just disappeared, and it's been going on for a while. Many of them just accept that this is part of the weirdness of this town, because it's a weird town. It's an old mining town where a lot of men have died in the mines or of diseases from the mines.
Okay.
Yeah. Plus, many years ago, the mines caught fire and have just been burning ever since. So the ground is just on fire. Plus,
it's not a good sign. I don't think if the ground's just on fire,
nope,
things are going well.
Not a good sign.
I don't feel like you ever see ground on fire and be like, oh.
That town's going places.
Yeah.
No.
Looks like a good spot for the next fire festival.
So not only ground, on fire, but the woods outside of town has some very strange creatures in it. Yeah. So back to L and V. This has happened to them. They know this town is just bizarre. A lot of people have had similar situations, but they can't take this. They're like, no, we have to figure out what's going on. So they search and they dig and they find answers. And the answers are part of why I chose this theme. There is something really deep and disturbing going on in this town. There's corporate greed affecting the town because it was mines. There's a lot of sexual anger that is affecting the women. Because when the men start getting hurt, who are you going to lash out at? You're going to lash out at the women.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Honestly, I can't reveal much more because some of the real joy, if you can call it joy, is discovering what has happened here and how conspiracy is so wrapped up in class, in corporations, in sexual politics and gender politics.
Yeah.
Another area I think of as conspiracy is when people just accept that this is how things are. Like the forces are out of control. I have no power.
Yeah.
If you think about just our situation, sometimes people take political conspiracy to such a level that they're like, well, my vote doesn't matter. So what bother? Why bother? That kind of stuff. That kind of situation has happened here. And some of, the men and the women have been just beaten down enough to think like, well, nothing's going to change. So, but then these two teenage girls come along and they say, no. We're going to figure this out.
We're going to do this.
Yep. It is a very quick read. It is a very cool format. The art really lends itself to the creep factor, to the conspiracy factor, and to the story. Long story short, if you like Carmen Maria Machado, definitely read this. Okay. It feels like one of her stories, really, just given, illustration form and made richer because it's in a graphic novel form.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I know, I'm sorry I can't tell you too much, but the part of the joy is figuring out
the discovery.
What I want to know, they don't really explain. Why'd you name the town that? That's a bad name for a town.
Shudder to think.
Things are going to go bad in that town.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not going to be good.
No. How do you have a Shudder to Think Chamber of Commerce that's attracting anyone?
Or the Better Business Bureau?
Yeah.
Nope.
Shudder to Think.
Work. Yeah.
Surprising. It didn't go well.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right.
So, yeah, my advice is just read it because you're going to like it.
Just read it. Just read this book.
Even if you're not sure you're going to like it, just read it.
Well, my other genre pick this week is by an author that I have recommended before, Sarah Weinman. And this is called The Real Lolita, The Kidnapping of Sally Horner and the Novel That Scandalized the World.
Oh, boy.
Yes. This was published in 2018. And most people have heard of the story of Lolita, the book by Vladimir Nabokov. And what most people may not realize is that it was inspired by and bears a very deep resemblance to the 1948 true life abduction of 11-year-old Sally Horner.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So in 1948, Sally was 11. Her biological father had died. She was lived at home with her mother. Her mom worked a lot. She was dared by some friends that she was trying to, probably impress to steal like a, 5-cent notebook or whatever it was from like a drugstore, a dime store. This man approaches her as she's doing that and says that he's FBI and that he saw it happen and he won't tell, but he's going to be in touch because there's some things that are going to have to be solved.
Oh, no.
And in her 11-year-old mind, she loses it. She doesn't want her mom to know. She thinks that she's going to jail.
Yep.
There's all kinds of issues. So a little bit of time goes by. She doesn't hear from him, and then she does hear from the man. He waits for her outside of school, talks to her, and says, "Hey, I talked to everybody involved, and you don't need to go to jail, but you are going to have to come to this conference with me and discuss. Like he comes up with some story that they have to go to this conference together. And he says, you're going to tell your mom that you're going to the shore with your friends and their dad, and that's how you're going to get away. But you can't tell her, you can't tell anyone about this, or the deal's off and you have to go to jail. So that is obviously concerning. She thinks,
extremely.
Yeah. So she goes with him. And she's not heard again for almost 2 years. And her mom has a little bit of trepidation, like, what? But Sally sells it really hard, and she's like, well, she deserves a little break. It's summer, you know. And then when she doesn't hear from her, she stops getting letters. It gets more and more scary.
God.
And there's all these stories of people that saw them, and that like he was pretending that she was his daughter for a period of time, all of these things. So, and it ends up that she does come home, but there's lots that happens after that. So this book weaves together the whole story of Sally Horner, and that I just gave you the tip of the iceberg, with the writing process and evidence that can be gleaned from Nabokov's own notes and writing. So
wow.
He claimed during his life to know very little of this story. But it was playing out before Lolita was published and what would have been the time that he was writing.
Yeah.
And some of the plot points are like incredibly similar, like almost exactly the same. And Sarah Weidman does this amazing job of weaving these two stories together. Like you're hearing Sally Horner, and then you're hearing what was going on with Vladimir Nabokov, and then you're hearing about Sally Horner and then about him again. And it's this really interesting true crime story, and it's also the process of an infamous writer. And it could almost read like literary criticism, but it actually is just this really incredibly accessible tone of this really interesting, kind of at its heart, conspiracy theory about whether or not he knew. He's got no cards that have information about it, but he still claims that he didn't really know this story. And it's not meant to make you think that he was involved or anything in the story. It's just, how much of this did you get? This very famous novel that went on to be like this huge deal. Really interesting. There's also a subplot about his wife and her involvement in it that is super fascinating in his writing of the book and getting it published. So I picked for this theme because he denied ever using it except superficially, even though there's lot
proof.
Of evidence, as you'll see. Yeah. And the book itself really feels kind of like this conspiracy theory, minus the fact that the author has like amazing research and backs up everything. But you can see how this book, it has a lot of history to it that no one even knows about, because the book itself was kind of a scandal. So it never really got the deep dive into like, where'd you come up with this story? Isn't this very similar? Plus, it's just a really interesting true crime case. There's moments in there that I was like, what? I mean, I said that out loud. Like, how did that happen?
Wow.
So it's fascinating. It's a really good read. Typical Sarah Weidman. She's an amazing writer, so it reads wonderfully, and I enjoyed every second of it.
That just is sticking in my brain as super creepy, just on all accounts, just all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's real weird. Yeah.
And I put myself in an 11-year-old mindset where,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
world sucks.
It does. Yeah. It does. Really does. Yeah.
Sounds like a great book, though.
It is. It's a terrific book. Yeah. Very good read.
Pop culture.
Yes.
I've got a show that I actually recommended to you and your husband the other day.
Oh.
It's Mr. Robot.
Yes.
You had mentioned that you watched Bohemian Rhapsody because you knew we were on the same star level there.
Yes.
So Rami Malek, who
Yes.
played Freddie Mercury to great acclaim.
He did. He won an Academy Award for it.
Yes.
And he deserved it.
Yeah, he did.
Deserved it.
Before all that,
That is such a big bird that just went in your overhang. And he just acted, talk about a rabbit hole. It looked like he just disappeared, and he is in there.
yeah, this bird, and I think there's multiple birds. They've built a nest in this sort of like loose eave, and Ziggy is watching it all day, every day.
And that has to drive him nuts because it just
drives me
disappears.
so nuts. There's a there's a table right here, and there's a sort of cat perch, and he will stay there for hours just watching, even if the birds aren't there, because he knows they're coming.
I just looked up. I see a very big bird. I'm not lying. It's not eagle size, but it's a big bird.
It is, and you're like, how are you?
And then all of a sudden, I'm like, he's
going
going in. He's gone. Oh my god.
He went down a rabbit hole,
This is a little bit horrifying.
and he went into the.
Oh, he knew we were talking about it. He stuck his head out.
Last year this was here too, and I think they built a little nest and had babies in there.
They made themselves a little...
They're procreating in that rabbit hole, which, I don't like to think about.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your Rami Malek.
That's okay, yeah.
Let's think about him and not that bird.
That's a great idea.
That large bird.
Rami Malek. Keep coming back to Rami Malek.
Yes.
Before Bohemian Rhapsody, before he became Mr. Oscar winner, Rami Malek, he was in Mr. Robot. And... by the way, there's 4 seasons of this. It's all done. Ooh. It's on Amazon Prime. You can binge it all. It's got Rami Malek. It also has Christian Slater. Appreciate some Christian Slater.
I do too. I really do.
And a whole host of other amazing people.
Yeah.
So we meet Elliot, who is Rami Malek, at a coffee shop in the first episode. And he approaches the owner. And you can see right away Elliot's a little bit odd. He's a little bit awkward. He's a bit intense. Not a lot of eye contact. Just very sort of, he's got a hoodie, that kind of situation. And he tells the owner, I hacked you. I found your secret stash of kiddie porn. And the owner tries to pay him off. And Elliot's just like, no, man, I don't want your money. And then you see the cops pull up. So Elliot is a hacker by night, pretty much. But by day, he's an office guy working in security at a tech firm. He lives alone. He's addicted to some drugs. He's very lonely. Then he notices this guy following him around. And that guy is Christian Slater. We come to know him as Mr. Robot. Oh. And he tells Elliot, man, the world is messed up. The rich are getting richer. The poor are getting poorer. There's systems in place that ensure that, especially at E Corp, which is this massive corporation that sort of combines Apple with Amazon and Enron, and they just basically rule the world.
Oh, my. Okay.
Mr. Robot says, though, we can fix it. We can bring E Corp down. And with it, all the world's debt, it's going to be gone. It's going to change the world. Elliot's childhood best friend, Angela, is drowning in college debt. Just like so many, people right now. His own situation sucks. Everyone around him, it just feels like they're all just playing this game at life. And because he hacks people all the time, he knows how dirty people are. And he knows how shitty things are under the surface. So he's like, yeah, let's do it. He joins Mr. Robot and this team, and they're going to change the world.
Oh, my gosh.
And that's just the start. That's just the first episode. It is a terrific premise. But a few episodes in, things change so dramatically. It's like you were watching one show and then it transforms into another show. In both of them are deeply personal. It's twisted, it's gripping, and that first surprise, I won't ruin it. It completely blew me away. Blew me away.
Blow me down.
Yes. One of the biggest sort of twists I never really saw coming, which is fantastic. Now I chose it for this theme because from the start we're getting Elliot's voiceover, right? Mm-hmm. He's narrating the show and he's telling us there's this secret group of guys that are running everything. They have the ultimate power, and he's found it, and he's going to change the world. And so much of this story is built around E Corp and bringing this corporation down. And we learn kind of why. Elliot's dad used to work for E Corp, and so did Angela's mom. And they both died because of toxic waste that was dumped at an E Corp site. It's a dirty organization, tons of conspiracies, a lot of them true, and part of this greater worldwide conspiracy that we start to see over the 4 seasons. So lots of conspiracy elements, lots of really personal stuff. There's a lot of mental illness in situations here, a lot of friendships, a lot of just living in the world and how lonely and terrifying it can be. And I can't say enough good things about this show. Wow. It's where I came to know and love Rami Malek. The things he does in this show are just bonkers. The writing is amazing. The design of it, the way that the creator, Sam Esmail, does the directing and the look and everything. It's so, so good. I really think you and Mike are going to love it. Okay. I think you listeners, you need to get in on this.
You need to get in on it. I'd heard of it, but we've never watched it, and I was excited to hear it.
Well, and it was sort of tucked away on USA Network, so you couldn't easily get to it. And now it's all on Prime, so get it.
I'm gonna get it.
And Rami Malek.
Rami Malek.
He is magnetic.
He is.
You can't take your eyes off that man. That tiny, tiny man.
Yeah.
He just somehow doesn't look very big. I don't know. It feels like I could put him in my pocket.
Do you have Rami Malek in your pocket right now?
Just fold him up, put him in my pocket.
Pull him out when I want.
Like, dance for me, Rami. Dance. Yeah.
Well, I don't know why you had a Southern accent when you did that either.
No.
That was a conspiracy theory in and of itself. You had Robin Malek in your pocket. You were Southern, and you made him dance. I clearly don't know you at all.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, so I don't know myself.
I like it, though.
Yeah.
I liked everything about it. Well, my pop culture pick this week is from Netflix. It was just released. It's called Operation Varsity Blues.
Ooh.
The college admissions scandal.
Oh, boy.
Now, I love a good documentary.
Oh, yeah.
And I love it when you surprise me in a documentary.
Oh, yeah.
And this one did that. And here's how.
Really?
First of all, it's produced by the crew of the documentary Fire. And so we all know that they've got some good stuff going. But it's a documentary, but they use the actual transcripts from the wiretapped phone calls and put actors in there. So you're like seeing it play out. Like it's like you're watching a made-for-TV movie, but it's the actual conversations
where these parents are trying to get their kids into school.
And it all centers around this guy named Rick Singer, who's played by Matthew Modine. And essentially, he's at the center of this entire scandal. He's the one that came up with the idea. He says there's things that are called backdoor ways into college, which means, so front door would be you just get into college like
like a normal person. Yeah.
A backdoor is when you give millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I'm saying that because they very often say in the documentary, like, $2 million isn't going to get it done to get in the back door. Like, you are giving a lot of money if you're trying to get your kid who doesn't really earn it into Harvard. We're talking the big Ivy League, big prestigious colleges, right?
And you always knew there was something like this.
Yeah,
like you knew it.
Not hard to get there. Yeah.
No.
Well, he creates what he calls the side door, which means that you do something to get your child in on some kind of athletic spot. Now, that doesn't mean they're there on scholarship. It means that they're just going to be a part of the team because coaches of different sports are allowed to hold certain spots for certain athletes. That's part of their recruiting. So they can say, no, I want this person. Mm-hmm. So you still maybe need to get a level of grades or whatever, but you can get in. So he created a side door, by creating these relationships with these coaches and athletic directors and people like that, securing a spot, and then he would just make it look as though that person whose parents were paying millions of dollars or thousands of dollars to have this happen played that sport.
Say water polo,
mm-hmm. rowing. They wouldn't be like your big sports.
Yeah,
they'd be something side like that. And then they would say things like, no, we don't necessarily think he's going to be the star. We want him to be a walk-on. He's got really good talent. They would cover everything up with all these other exchanges. And then maybe a big donation was made to the sports team or whatever it was. So it's so interesting. And if you think you know everything about this scandal, because it was everywhere on the news.
And this is like Felicity Huffman. This is
Lori Loughlin and her husband. Yeah. And a lot of other they talk about them briefly, but there's a lot of other really high-powered people that were, lawyers, different people that were involved. If you think you know everything about this, you really, truly don't. Because there was stuff revealed in there that I was like, what? And it'll be interesting where your sympathy lies. Because you end up kind of feeling sorry for some people in there that you wouldn't have expected to have sympathy for. I think it's a rabbit hole because there's so much more to know about this whole situation. And these universities are still claiming that there's no way to do this. There's no back door and there's no side door and all of, Rick Singer is out. These other people have been sentenced to jail time. They've paid fines, and you'll see why he's still out. But there's just so much going on here and it's so interesting. And he himself is a rabbit hole. Like his background is super shady. So the whole thing is fascinating. And I love that they got a whole bunch of actors to play these parts.
That's what I was thinking. Like, I am imagining as an actor, you're like, oh, these other actors got caught with this, but I'm going to play them somehow.
And they're all, I mean, this might sound bad. They're kind of B-list actors.
Well, sure.
But somehow that works better because you're like, oh, yeah, all these A-listers that were throwing around their millions of dollars. Now these B-list actors
are like, I'm on the B team. I'm ready to come up to the big team.
Yeah. They're like, look, I didn't have the money to get my kid into a college.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to play you in your scandal.
Also, the more the colleges deny that kind of stuff, the more conspiracy theories there's going to be about it. And there's more, the more people are going to be like, of course there's a back door.
Yes.
Of course there's a side door.
Of course there is. Yeah.
Ugh.
It is. It's really interesting. And it's quick. It's just over an hour. It's not super long.
Oh, okay.
But I loved it. I thought it was really well done. It's a lot of interesting facts about it that I didn't realize. And the way it plays out, just seeing actors do it really helps the whole thing. So it's a good rabbit hole to go down.
So, like, how much were they paying? It was in the hundreds of thousands, right?
Well, yeah,
but it wasn't
because
the millions.
No, because the millions, you can just go in the back door.
Right.
You don't have to mess around
you don't
with
have to
this
play
other stuff.
like you're on a team,
And everybody at the university knows that, even though they don't. This is much more secret because you're talking about dealing with just one part. Like, it's possible that the heads of the universities didn't know that this part was going on, that they just thought these people were getting in this way. So we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars that were paid to Rick, that were paid to either the athletic director for the whole department for that particular sport.
Ugh.
Maybe they donated for something that team wanted. There's a couple of them that were obviously personally reimbursed.
Yeah.
There's some that they never took personal reimbursements. It was all like, oh, you donated to the program kind of thing. Here you go. It's really, it's interesting to see that. They had people that you could pay someone to take the test for your kid.
Like the ACT or SAT?
Yeah, but your kid wouldn't know. Basically what would happen is they would set up your child would apply to get special time because they have a learning disability. They would get a private proctor. Okay, so they would your child would take the test just like everyone else. They would leave, and before that private proctor would turn in that test, they would take the test themselves.
Oh my God.
And turn it in so that score.
So in that way, then the kids don't know.
Right, they don't know that wasn't actually their score, that somebody else did that. So on that level, in that scenario, they didn't know. And there was kind of a funny thing about that people said, oh man, how'd they get the answers and stuff? And they're like, no, people, this is a test for juniors in high school. Like they just got proctors that knew what they were doing, and they just took the test. They didn't have the answers. They just took it themselves.
I'm imagining I'm one of those kids and I'm like, look how good I did. This is awesome. And then, oh no, my parents did this.
Shoot Magoo. Yeah.
Oh, that's gross then too. Like bringing them into this illegal thing without their knowledge. I don't know if that's better or worse.
He started like his business, like they talked to a few former like clients of his that it was more legitimate. Like they went to him for coaching. Like he knew the college process. Like he kind of set himself up as that. So these parents would pay him to come over and coach them how to do well on the ACT, which that's not uncommon. Or this is what you need to say in your interview, or these are things you need to be involved in the next 2 years to get into this school. So they had some of those. Like those are the first level when he was still kind of legitimate, and they were talking just about his personality and stuff. So it's interesting because you learn a lot about him too and his rise to being a total fraudster.
How does one get into this? Interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's something.
I think he's actually a cat in disguise because cats would be all into that kind of fraud.
Yeah, that's true.
And let's make the humans look dumb.
I will tell you that apparently he applied to be on a reality TV show at some point, and they have his audition tape in there, and it is worth it just to see that.
Oh my goodness.
Just to see that weird haircut and vest. So that's a teaser for you.
If you like weird haircuts and vests, man, oh man.
Yeah.
You're
going to want to see it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Got some intense picks. Some
real
good
rabbit
ones.
holes.
Some real rabbit holes. And we've uncovered the cat conspiracy to, dominate all conspiracies.
Yeah, I think it's the most viable one I've ever heard.
Well, on that note, we're going to be back next Wednesday. A different theme. Same day, though.
Same day.
Yeah.
Same us. Different thing.
Might be the Podcats in disguise. Who knows? But it's still going to be,
different
we're going to sound the same. Different books. And until then,
happy reading.